understanding that if you're using AI for communication, that the vocabulary and the dialects are still being built. They can't be necessarily relied on for 100% accurate communication at this time. So it's a really good starting point, but misunderstandings, mispronunciations are still going to be the norm. And it's really important to strive for flexible and empathetic listening.
Welcome to AI Experience, the podcast that demystifies artificial intelligence. My name is Julien Redelsperger, and we are going to find out how AI is changing the world. And I'm super happy to welcome Bonnie Sherriff. She is an educator and linguist with a background in human development and educational psychology. Professionally, she works internationally as a linguistic accent advisor, specializing in accent reduction and dialect change. So today we will talk about artificial intelligence and voice and what happens when machines start speaking like us, sometimes better than we do. We'll explore how AI is reshaping accents, identity, and communication itself. Thank you for joining me today. How are you, Bonnie?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. And maybe we're going to start with the basics, Bonnie. Just, explain to me a little bit, like, what does a linguist specialized in accent reduction actually do day to day? Like, what is your job?
So, I work with people who want to change or reduce their accent when speaking English. The therapeutic act of changing an accent takes, on my end, observation, assessment, planning, instruction for mechanical change, as well as motivation and encouragement through really kind of a challenging habit change for each individual. It's a really personal experience. It exposes a lot of insecurities for people. Very intelligent and capable people really struggle because they're not able to be understood as well as their brain thinks. So generally, they come seeking support in that area. They're living day to day in a place where they're kind of constantly disregarded or ignored or misunderstood and often asked to repeat themselves. So most of the people that I work with are expats, though some are living um, in their home countries and are intentionally looking to add another accent. As well as a dialect coach, works specifically with actors, and they're obviously looking to add another accent to their repertoire, and building confidence in speaking and articulating in general. That's a big part of what I do as well.
So we live in a global digital world right now, and sometimes we may tend to think that the American accent is the English accent by default. Why does accent still matter in such a world? And uh, and is it a shortcut that we need to be careful of?
Well, accent matters because it's so personal. The digital world has a lot of solutions to help ease communication internationally, but when you're actually in a room with someone, people still want to look in another person's eyes and feel heard and feel understood. So at the end of the day, people kind of have to decide whether they want to interact through an interface or whether they want to be able to, again, look in people's eyes and be understood. Um, I think most people fundamentally want to be understood. Um, the digital world is making things a lot easier from country to country across, when you're speaking across a screen, but in person, people are still looking to be able to communicate for themselves. So it matters in the room a lot more to people personally. But the digital world is really helping things, across screens through digital meetings and things like that.
And so that's where artificial intelligence comes into play because, based on your experience and your expertise, how has AI changed the way you work and the way you teach compared to a few years ago? Because maybe today I haven't tested out actually, but maybe I can ask ChatGPT to help me with my accent, or I can ask Gemini or Claude. How do you see those changes going in the next 5 years, and how has it evolved since the past couple of years?
Fundamentally, the core of my job hasn't changed at all. But peripherally, I use AI for a number of extraneous tasks. And then on the client end, AI can be really useful and it will become more useful as it improves. Right now, in terms of accent, it's still got a long way to go to really have the refinement that it needs to be as effective as it should be, to actually help people with change. But it AI is continually learning, so it I'm sure it will improve over time. Um, I think that people at this point still are looking for a real person for the connection and nuance and kind of accountability to show up and practice. But on the other hand, AI can be really, really great uh, from an educational psychology perspective for things like scaffolding, supportive pairing, body doubling, intentional practice. But at this point, the AI isn't quite detailed enough to take people from a basic accent change to proper full refinement. Myself and my colleagues have played around with various AI options that are out there, and they're just not detailed enough. They don't have the level of nuance that they need quite yet. As I said, they're learning and they're going to get better. They are a useful practice tool because it can help reinforce everything that's being learned. Um, but uh, Probably the biggest change is that people ask us a lot about AI and, practice with AI and kind of compare what we're doing to the AI. And it'll come back with things saying, you sound 98% foreign. And they're like, but I'm not 98% foreign sounding anymore. I've been working for so long. But really, they can tell 3 or 2% isn't there, but they don't, the level of nuance to pick out exactly what those aspects are isn't quite there yet.
What was your reaction when you first tried to talk to ChatGPT or any AI tools? Like, were you excited, scared, concerned?
I would say that I was very interested to start. It can be, a bit trepidatious to look at a new technology that, people are saying is going to, wipe out jobs and all of these things. So definitely, there's an element of, wow, like how good is this going to be able to get? Um, but in using them, it's been quite entertaining actually as professionals as we're talking about it because we laugh about the things that it's not able to do yet. For instance, in a lot of cases it'll say things like drop the T, but rarely in English do we actually drop out a T or a sound. It's usually a different mechanical position to finalize a sound or to transition a sound. So there's so much more to it. Um, it's been fun, interesting actually to try all of these things out. And as I said, I'm uh, kind of excited at the opportunity that this is going to give people to, you know, it's a easier accessibility for a lot of people to just get in there and try, you know, to change their accent when they're really having trouble being understood. So it kind of, it can help soften some things for sure and help people be understood. But, myself and my colleagues, we are booked and busy. People are really looking for that personal support and understanding in the change of an accent because there really is so much to it.
So would you say maybe AI would tend to oversimplify that accent topic?
It does. It oversimplifies it.
And of course, we don't speak the same way from New York City to, I don't know, St. Louis, Missouri to Louisiana to even Vancouver, Toronto.
Absolutely.
And AI doesn't know yet those subtle changes.
The AI is, designed specifically for the masses, right? It's meant to be broadcast accent. It's to help the many as opposed to the few. So it's it's not looking to, specialize into all of these micro dialects that are all over the world. It's looking to communicate to the most people in the easiest way. So generally, is a very flat, broad accent that it's using.
So, as AI generates more of the voices we hear online or on social media, even in advertising, do you think we are moving toward a single standardized English? And is that a problem? Like, what are the risks?
The AI is looking to make communication easiest. So those broad accents is what it's going for. But most people's accents, they're constantly code switching, and their accent and their vernacular in general is going to change based on the group of people that they're with. So accents are always retained in their ever evolving, flexible way by culture, by experience. And dialects are always going to exist between those close groups of people, even if a broader accent is adopted more widely. Um, you know, there for years there was this mid-Atlantic accent that was used, throughout media across Hollywood, and the general public didn't really pick up that accent. It was very much in the media that we would hear this accent. People still tend to retain their personal accents with the people that they're closest to. And those accents and the way people speak, the words they use will change. Even you'll notice young kids speak differently amongst their friends than they do amongst their family. People will speak differently, uh, amongst their close circle than they will with the broader community. And then their tight knit community will speak differently than even, a 30-minute drive down the road. So I think that culture and experience is always going to kind of dictate how people will speak interpersonally. But the AI and digital media is going to always look for that broader broadcast accent that's going to, kind of work for the masses, work for the many, the most people.
When you try to talk to a text to speech, a text to voice tool, what kind of accent would you say the output is made of? Is it a global mix of multiple accents, or is it one specific accent, like, I don't know, West Coast, East Coast, something like that?
So you can find different models that are designed in different places. A lot of the stuff is coming out of the United States. So they're a broadcast, American accent is the dominant there. But when you hear things kind of coming out of Europe, a lot of those are using sort of more of a British, even Regency accent, a broader accent in more of a British broad type. It's choosing to use the accent and the phonemes that are going to be understood by the most people.
With that kind of standardization of accent, do you think we can see some dialects that are most at risk of being left out by current AI models? Is that a cultural, philosophical issue?
Small regional dialects are going to be left out of this by sheer numbers alone. If you drive 20, 30 minutes, you'll have a different dialect. And that is true, here in Canada, it's true in the UK. And all over the world, languages like this are going to change their dialect when you just move slightly in one direction or another. But if people are looking to have their dialect represented, it's not actually that challenging to do, because all you have to do is give it a sample. So if you give it a sample size large enough and give it a descriptive title and educate the AI, then it is able to come back at you, because it breaks it down to the phoneme individual parts. It's able to come back at you with an approximation of that accent. But it would take effort to put that dialect into the AI, as opposed to, it can't just create it from nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, those big AI companies are usually based in the US, and I'm wondering, like, what would they care for, like, uh, English accent from India, Pakistan, again, Scotland, Germany, whatever.
And India has its very own, multiple actually, very own English dialects. And that's something that people come and they hope to retain certain aspects of their accent, and when you're working with an AI, that kind of nuance may not be able to be worked through like it would with a human. People grow up and learn their dialect with who they're close to, even interacting with media or AI. Um, they may be absorbent to change their accent, but it also can just kind of blend into the cacophony of accents that comes through media.
I'm just thinking that in terms of evolution, because basically our accents today are already different from the one from our grandparents, for example. And I'm just wondering if AI is simply accelerating a natural evolution, or is it just, disturbing it, changing it? I mean, what's your take on that?
So, language is a constantly evolving organism, basically. So, it is always dynamic, it is always changing. As a linguist, always studying, always learning, always new. There's always more to learn, there's always change happening. AI is an additional media source that's coming in. I wouldn't say at this point AI is shaping much, but it is a tool that is making communication easier. As I said kind of before, I think culture and experience is still going to kind of dictate how people actually interact with people closest to them. And the that kind of informs language evolution and dialect specificity. Broadcast accents have been used kind of in media for centuries in various places. And, you know, AI will sort of kind of turn out to be like the Muzak of communication. It's basic, it's non offensive, it's uh, really kind of the softest and broadest interpretations of the sound, and it will be another voice, but it won't necessarily drive the change that we see, um, because those are really so personal. It's really the slang and the timing and things that come out of really small group interactions that extends out from community.
We,
um,
we know that today a lot of content have been created with AI, and I'm thinking about, scams. How easy or how hard it is to fake a voice. I mean, what are the first signals that a voice is synthetic, that a voice is fake or AI generated, so you don't fall into a trap, or you don't, you realize this is a scam and this is not something you should click on or be interested in.
Basically, to fake a voice convincingly depends on the subset of material that the AI has to work from. So, you know, if you are somebody who has a large online presence and your actual voice is available to uptake, that is a lot easier to fake and scam out of. But scammers are still able to take small subsets of voice and make it say something, and is the grandparent scams and all of these things are coming up. So it isn't, I wouldn't say it's easy to fake a voice, but it can be done. So the kind of the important thing to do is to make sure that you are asking it further questions, because once it gets going, that's where it starts to fall apart. Try to have things like a code word with people that you're close with so that you can identify if something is sounding off to you, or even if it's not. If somebody's asking you to do something, always check in. It's something that's going to have to be built into the way we function at this point. um, so it can't create something from nothing, but most people have such a large online presence these days with social media that there are aspects to pull from. So scams are happening all around us these days.
And so, how do you think? I mean, how easy it is to identify a fake voice? Like, what are the little things that we need to be careful?
So, even just a short phrase is really hard to identify. But as they speak longer, what you can notice is that the patterns of speech are very regular, even though they have built in a large diversity of tonal shift um, that's been uploaded from various contexts. The natural level of nuance still isn't achieved as of yet. If you think about the natural rise and fall of kind of social English language, they have very intentionally use the rules of language to establish reasonable tone shifts, to establish proper cueing for the listener. And that's intonation, the grammar led rules of pitch change, basically. But if you listen longer, you'll start to realize that the shape of the sound that's generally in a human influenced by intention, emotion behind natural speech isn't there. It's very symmetrical, it's very balanced. Humans aren't like that. Nothing is consistent in natural human speech. And even though we know the rules of intonation and follow them innately, we also modulate our pitch, pace, power, and pausing all individually. So the possibilities for human speech are just so endless that when you further to that, when you factor in timing aspects like linking and reductions, it's so nuanced and personal that you can hear the lack of humanity in the AI. Um, it's as I said, it is able to follow intonation rules. So it goes up with a question and it, follows a nice rhythm, but that rhythm is very symmetrical when you listen to it over a long period of time. And humans aren't like that.
What do you think are the new opportunities created by AI in your field or more globally in the communication field that actually didn't exist before?
For me, I'd say that mainly opportunity comes out of time savings that AI helps with extraneous tasks. My personal day to day hasn't really changed at all because it's so personal and physical. But for clients, AI has expanded practice options. It's also expanded accessibility for people who, there can be a bit of a barrier to entry, both emotionally and financially. And sometimes this can be an access point for people. And then once you start with it, you sort of realize how much there is to build. And a lot of people have come to me saying, I started with an AI, and then they come to a person because they realize how much there is to learn in changing your accent. Um, but once people actually get to me, again, the job is so personalized, connection and trust is such a big part of it that my actual job hasn't really changed within it. Um, you know, every day people push back and on what they're kind of required physically to do to change the sound. It feels awkward, feels exaggerated, feels clumsy, to change the mechanics of your mouth and your tongue. People feel a bit embarrassed. And realistically, if an AI tells you to do something that is just quoting from things that people say that feels ridiculous, too much, not right, comically large. Will you really persist through it? Write it off as wrong and kind of move on? Will you try to do it? Do less, approximate the sound, which is kind of how people learn to speak English already. And that doesn't account for the change that they're looking for. Skill sets, all skill sets and ability levels are, trying to do this. And psychologically, people tend not to persist
Mhm.
independently in the same way. So AI has definitely created, that access point, and, the practice element is really, really excellent. But right now we're still finding that that personal element is really important.
So I understand your job is safer now.
At this point, it is, yes. But, AI is really learning, and it is getting better. And I think it's a great tool. And as it learns, it will become a better tool. But it's This accent change is it really is therapy that has to change a physical, mechanical way of functioning, as well as a really challenging habit because people have been speaking this way for many people their whole lives because they taught themselves how to speak English and approximated those movements and, you know, timing and all of that. So
So, my last question for you would be about what type of job that could be at risk with AI. And I'm thinking about voice actors. They do voiceover for I don't know, movie, documentary, advertising. Maybe they do some audiobook narration as well. How do you think AI is changing this field?
it's definitely going through a transition period right now where, you know, especially with newer companies with low budgets, they are definitely opting to use AI solutions. It just, the budget savings is tangible. Um, Within the voice acting industry, there is still uh, a level of respect and retention that wants to, respect the artistry and, as quickly as you can type in a prompt to AI and get a response back with something, you can talk to a real human and have them do, three different takes in three different ways and wrap it up inside of a quick session. So it's definitely going through a challenging transition period right now. Um, and, you know, legislation in a number of areas is starting to be handed down, and I think there will be a retention and a respect for the industry over time. But yes, it's a really kind of difficult time right now, um, for that industry, and even the job application process within that industry has AI aspects that have made it very, tricky. Um, so yeah, right now it's a challenging space.
Would you be willing to get a first interview with an AI avatar, or would you be willing to listen to a AI created audiobook or AI narrated audiobook?
So I have listened to various AI generated, audiobooks or uh, various media that is placed through audio. And when it's AI, it can be very clear, very quick. There's lots of good aspects to it. But again, that kind of consistent patterning in the voice, it almost allows the mind to tune out a lot easier. It's the novelty and the unexpectedness of a human voice that retains interest. And, you know, so people are definitely releasing things done by AI, but I think going through this transition period, real voices are really going to be what keeps people interested and engaged and coming back to the media again and again. Um, AI is learning, so we'll see how that goes. But there's so much nuance to the human voice. Um, and that really is what connects with people when you're just listening.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie. So we're almost at the end of this episode. Just before we wrap up, let's move to the final segment, a very practical one. If our listeners were to remember just three things from our conversation, what would it be? Three key ideas, practical tips, decisions to make, pure, like concrete things, no theory, practical takeaways. What would it be?
Understanding that if you're using AI for communication, that the vocabulary and the dialects are still being built. They can't be necessarily relied on for 100% accurate communication at this time. So it's a really good starting point, but misunderstandings, mispronunciations are still going to be the norm. And it's really important to strive for flexible and empathetic listening, so that you can, really have success incorporating the tool for clarity, but really meeting people where they're at personally.
So that's number one. Number two.
Yeah, I'd say the second thing would be using AI as a practice tool, a productivity tool is really a good choice. Using AI for scaffolding, meaning support as you're learning, or using it as a support pairing. The kind of trendy term for that right now is body doubling, particularly for people with ADHD or learning troubles. Having that support pairing of an AI beside you keeps you motivated and moving through, and keep coming back to that practice tool that has, it'll send you reminders on your phone and things like that. It's keeping people going. So don't shy away from AI. Definitely use it, but you know, it's not 100% there yet, but it can be really, really supportive as somebody who's practicing and learning.
And the last one.
Last one, biggest thing I'd say, keep informed. The AI landscape is changing so rapidly. Safety, privacy have to be absolutely kept top of mind. Anything that you give to the AI, it has for all of eternity. So think about what you're exposing. Have family safe words and processes in place to protect your personal safety and privacy in your communications. And, you know, listen to this podcast, especially those 10-minute digest episodes, really keep everything fast and up to date. And yeah, use AI as comfortably as you are informed, I would say.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bonnie. So, at the end of each episode, the guest answers the question posed by the previous guest. After that, you'll have the opportunity to ask a question for the next guest. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, here's your question, courtesy of Brian Cute, who is the CEO of the Global Cyber Alliance. We can listen to his question right now.
I'd like to hear someone's view on the younger generation and the next 10 to 20 years. What do you see as their quality of life, their opportunities online, and the threats that they're going to face?
Hmm. Big question, I think, for everybody. Um, I'd say to start with education. Educators are nothing if not flexible. I have full faith in Canadian educators to stay in line with best practices as this evolves. Assessments will have to change, standards will have to change to reflect the use of AI throughout education. But I think with like minded nations, we're already sharing educational resources and philosophy that will continue. And those conversations are already happening. And I think legislation will have to follow in terms of how the education system pivots. But I think that will, continue to evolve. Nothing to truly fear. The job application process for young people right now is in kind of a messy challenge. AI has made things ethically ambiguous. And again, legislation is just starting to be handed down. Hopefully, this process will be more regulated very soon, but applying for jobs is really difficult right now with the inclusion of AI, and entry level positions have changed and will continue to change. I think it's going to be critical thinking, communication, empathy, creativity, and it's going to be those skills that are really going to set you apart as an employable person. And it's flexibility and adaptability that's going to keep you progressing in your career as a young person.
So you have kids, Bonnie. How do you prep them for an AI world? Like, do you discuss about artificial intelligence with
Very
them?
much so. It's always a part of our dinner table discussion. Media literacy in general is a very important thing for families to discuss. It's a huge part of the various curriculums in Canada. And it should be a big part of everybody's discussion already, and incorporating AI discussion into that media literacy is really important because of how fast this is moving. So yes, we are discussing those things every day. How to be aware, how to protect yourself, how to second guess and question things. A big part of what we talk about with uh, our kids and my family, as well as students in general, is source material. Always looking for that source material. What is this based on? Is it a proper study? Is it statistically significant? Statistical interpretation is going to become more and more important over time as we are provided with quick data through AI. We need to be able to actually interpret that data properly. So taking, research methods and statistical analysis is going to become, I think, a big part of, university education. And, as I said, adaptability and flexibility are going to take people a long way.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. So now, what question would you like to pose for the next guest?
I would like to pose the question that as long as AI runs in a profit driven system, access is going to be inherently unequal. How will unequal access to AI affect the ability to achieve in society going forward in the next few years? And what do you think about that?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bonnie. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that wraps up another episode of AI Experience. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform. Your support counts, and your comments can really help share this experience with others. You can also visit the website ai-experience.io to find out more. See you soon for a new episode.